Hey guys, I'm Doctor McFarland and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to look at how to build your first rig on the Headrush Flex Prime. All right, so honestly, if you are used to using an iPhone or any kind of mobile device with a swipey finger thingy, then you can easily figure out how to use the Headrush. Most things, and I do say most things, you do not have to read the manual at all. If you just set this in front of a kid, they'll eventually figure out, hey, if you push your finger here and drag it there, then you can start building some awesome tones. So let's go ahead and dive right into the screen and see what we're looking at. So first of all, you need to look at the top left-hand corner, and we're going to click on the little grid area there. And we can see that there's a set list option. So we have all kinds of set lists, and you can make your own, or there's a lot of default ones. So for instance, you got the guitar, bass, synth set list already made for you. So if you want to go explore those on your own time, then that's probably something well worth doing. But just for our own purposes, we're going to just be in all rigs and go back out. And that's just going to mean whatever rig we build is just going to be added to the general pool of rigs that are in the all rigs set list. So with that said, I'm currently on an LK Rocks rig, which I was playing around with my daughter, and hey, here's a tone that you can play with, right? So anyway, let's go to the plus symbol. That's going to make a new rig. And we have 14 blocks to work with. But I'm going to dial this back and not fill up all 14 blocks. This just be really basic today, really simple. Let's think of a situation that you just want to show up with a basic amp, cab, reverb, delay, overdrive, tremolo, phase, just very simple stuff. So what we're going to do first is actually add in our amp and cab. So I know that I have a lot of space here, but let's just say, for example, I'm going to start kind of in the middle. So I'm going to click on the first block on the second row, and that's going to add in our amplifier. And we do have the option to add a Headrush amp or a Revolver amp. And there's also some clone options that we can mess with later on, maybe in later videos. But just for now, let's just be really, really basic. And this is go to Headrush. And I really personally like the Black Mini. I don't know why. It's not tons of headroom, but it's just enough, grit when you crank it up that it just sounds really good. But I usually keep it on the lower side, so it's still relatively clean. And then from there, we can go in and add a cab. Let's do a Headrush cab, and I'm going to choose the 1x12 Black Panel Lux, which is going to really be your 1x12 cab based on a deluxe reverb. Okay. Now, with this said, let me turn up my volume on the guitar here, and I can play a chord. And wow, what do you know? It instantly sounds really good. There's not a whole lot I would want to do with that. Okay, on the bottom right corner is our output. Okay, so wherever you have your amp set, you then need to go into your output section and make sure your green bars are hitting right at 0 there on the dial. And we are actually a little bit lower than 0. So let's tap on the rig volume and then use our encoder wheel to move it up maybe about 3 dB or so. And you'll see when you dig in that it gets closer to 0. And then when you play light, right, it's a little bit lower than 0. So maybe we'll go up to about 4 dB. Now this process is going to ensure that every rig that you make has the same relative volume. That way, when you're switching from rig to rig, one volume is not higher than the other, and it's all pretty consistent. So now let's add a reverb. And there's lots of good reverbs in here. I really like the spring reverb. It's really good. And the air verb and the 11 verb just has tons and tons of options. But that's just for now, since we're dealing with a classic blackface Fender amp, let's just dial in a stereo reverb. Okay, so let's play. All right, now instantly to my ears, that is a little more prominent in the mix than I would want. So let's double tap on the block, and then just bring down the mix. Okay. You can see when you touch your finger that the whole screen goes black and only the parameter that you're touching is now in focus. You can see it a lot clearer on the screen. That's not something that you would have saw on the MX5, which is the older version. So, okay, great. So a mix of about 15, 16% gives me where I want to be. And to ensure that if the reverb ever gets bypassed, I'm going to turn on the tails option right here. So that way when the block is bypassed, the effect will keep going, or the trails or the tails or the spillover keeps going. Okay. All right. Now at this point, let's go ahead and save. We're just going to call this Doc Basic. And now we have just a good amp and cab and reverb setup. So it's very similar to just walking into a room with your favorite combo amp, setting it down, and then plugging your guitar straight into the input. And that's the sound that you have, right? But a lot of guys, they want effects. They want some overdrive. They want some delay and some tremolo and some other things. So let's go ahead and add those other elements. Now notice I'm putting the reverb after the amplifier. This is just purely a studio type setup to where typically you have your post effects, which is delays and reverbs and stuff like that, after your signal path or possibly after you've already recorded something. So it's very much like a studio type setup. I could easily, though, put my reverb before the amplifier, but it does mean that as I crank up the amp, that the reverb and delay are going to get a little crunchier sounding, which you may not want. So depending on if you've chosen an overdrive type amplifier or more of a cleaner amp, you may want to experiment by putting your delays and reverbs before or after the amp, just depending on the sound that you're going for. But for me, I'm going to keep it after the amp in this case. And let's just go ahead and add in a delay. Okay. The Bucket Brigade delay is your Memory Man delay. And then there's the air delay and there's the Dyne delay. Those are more of your digital delays, which are going to be very clean sounding with not a lot of modulation. We do have a Moog style delay, which is kind of neat. And let's just for fun, let's go ahead and choose that one. So we'll go with the default sync. Okay, notice that the pitch kind of goes up as the trails keep going. And it also gets pretty dark. So let's just turn the mix down a little bit. Okay, we do have a rate in the depth. Let's just turn the depth down a little bit. All right, this will be fine for now. There's tons of other ones you can experiment with, but let's just add in a delay of some sort, okay? We'll go ahead and tap on that to bypass it. Then let's go ahead and add in an overdrive. Tons of great overdrives in here. There is the Greener, which is your tube screamer. We have the K drive, which is your Klon. S1 drive, which is your Boss S1 overdrive. The Sheriff is your Marshall blues breaker type stuff. Treble boosters, white boost, all kinds of things. Let's just, for our example, let's just put in a classic tube screamer. So the Greener JRC, we'll just choose the default, double tap, and you can see it defaults to drive at 50, tone at 50, and then level at 100. And this is the sound that we have. Okay, so for just a good starting point, that's plenty of overdrive, and you can experiment by cranking it up all the way. Or you can bring it all the way down, which is the classic tube screamer setup, and just get a good drive into the front end of the amp. And then let's just say, for example, I really like adding some tremolo. So let's go to the modulation section, trim, tremolo, and we'll just pick one for now that I can go in and adjust it later. So I personally like the 5 kilohertz kind of range. It gives you like that good medium to fast tremolo sound. Okay, it is a little bit more prominent in the mix, so let's bring down the depth. All right, there you go. So now we have a drive, tremolo, delay, reverb, amp, and a cab. But we do have some switches down here that we have some things assigned to, and there is an automatic assignment in the global settings, which you can turn off. So I don't want the amp and the cab on a switch because I'm never going to turn those off. So I'm going to go to my second icon up here, which is the hardware assign. Now we can tap on a block. Let's say I want my green JRC on that first block right there. Okay, and it's been added. Go to the cab, and let's add our tremolo. And then I'm never going to turn the reverb off either. So I'm just going to go there, and let's pick our analog delay. And there's that. Okay, so now we have a good setup of, we can turn our drive on and off, our tremolo on and off, and then our M104 delay on and off. Okay, so here it is with everything bypassed. Kick in our overdrive. Okay, turn that off and turn on our tremolo. And then we have our delay. So that is my way of making a very simple preset that I can show up to any jam session, any recording session, and just have some options in a rig I can pull up really fast. Just like you have a pedal board in front of you with a real amp and maybe some select pedals from whatever manufacturer that you like to use. And the Headrush Prime is small enough you can put it into any gig bag, any front pocket of a guitar case, and it can be a good backup for a tube amp and pedal board setup. But if anything goes down, you can just pull this out. You already have a rig created and ready to go, and you can just plop it on the floor, plug in your cables, go into front of house, or maybe your audio interface, and you can have a really good sound the rest of the gig with this small little unit. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. And once again, I am Dr. McFarland. I will see you in the next video. Keep rocking.